Hey there, good people, and welcome back to the DNP podcast. I'm your host, Debo Agbede, and I'm ready for another week of NFL action. This episode will look at whether the Atlanta Falcons are the most underrated team in the NFL after their Monday night win, and who should the Titans hire to replace Brian Callahan after they fired him this week. And as I'll do every week, picks for 6 games on the weekend against the spread in our Pick 6. This pod is available on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts, so like, rate, subscribe, and all that good stuff so you can stay up to date with each upload. Well, on Monday night, my Atlanta Falcons did what many believed they couldn't do, and that was beat the Buffalo Bills by a score of 24-14. This result was very much off the back of our two premier playmakers, Bijan Robinson and Drake London, who combined for 396 yards from scrimmage. The Falcons sit at 3-2 and second in the NFC South behind the 5-1 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So this does beg the question, because the Bills are very much one of, at least pre-season, the premier teams, one of the top echelon Super Bowl contenders in the league. And the Falcons really, from especially that first half, dominated proceedings. In the second half, it got a little bit more touchy, like a one-score game for the vast majority of that second half, and the Bills could have made their way back in, but the Falcons' defense didn't really allow them that chance, and it was sort of Josh Allen feeling the heat and feeling the pressure, and you're like, okay, this isn't just, a defense that before the game was ranked number one in terms of total defense by yardage, and you would have said, oh, okay, well, who have they really faced or whatever, but this is Josh Allen we're talking about. This is the reigning NFL MVP, and for the Falcons to have been able to get to him and get that pressure makes you wonder, like, why were they so, unfancied going into this game? And, even this weekend going up against the 49ers, they are still underdogs, I believe, by a 3-point margin. So it's like, are the Falcons the most underrated team in the league? Well, judging by the posters behind me, it's fair to say that I believe that the Falcons are capable of certain things, but then again, I am a fan. But this is more than just my fandom talking here. This is like, think about, any team that is number one in total defense, number two in total offenses by yardage as well, and you're saying, why can't this team go on a run? Why can't the Atlanta Falcons make their way into the upper echelon of the NFC contenders and may make a run deep in the playoffs? Because I think there are still people now that would look at this Falcons team and probably don't even think they make the playoffs to begin with. And no other team is both top 5 in offense and defense. The Falcons, the only team with that honor, you could say. Well, so why can't they, or why don't people believe that this is a team that can make a deep run? Now, obviously, looking at the schedule and teams they faced so far this season, you say week 1, Bucks. Obviously, Koo misses the kick at the end that could have forced this game into overtime, but we've seen so far this season that the Bucks are very much a high-level team in the NFL and can definitely see themselves as, probably the best team form-wise in the NFL, and the Falcons definitely kept that game close. Then week 2, Sunday Night Football, the Falcons went to Minnesota and dominated proceedings there from quarter 1 to quarter 4, 22-6 scoreline. JJ McCarthy hasn't even played since. So, the Falcons defense definitely covered themselves in glory there. The issue, and I think maybe the root of all perception for casuals or even people who don't pay full attention to the Falcons, is that week 3 loss at Carolina, the 30-0 shutout, which, without looking at what's happened there or just looking at what red zone highlights show you, seeing a 30-0 loss away to the Carolina Panthers, who are much better than a lot of people said. I mean, not to justify the result, but you could definitely say that that is, if any team loses 30-0 to a team that hadn't won at that point in the season, you're like, okay, yeah, just throw them to the side, they're done. But what it has done, seemingly, at least in terms of results, it's, it's been a kick up the arse. It's been like a hold on, a gut check sort of do we want to be remembered as a team that lost 30-0 to Carolina, or do we want to be a team that leaves this by the wayside? All losses count the same, so it's still just one on the record. They don't give you 2 extra losses because you got shut out. It is still just one, and they've responded with a bounce back performance against the Commanders, which, despite not having Marcus Mariota, they weren't. Oh, sorry, not having Jaden Daniels, pardon me, but having Marcus Mariota starting, it's not. He still put up 34 points after a shutout, so it's like, well, Jaden Daniels doesn't play defense, right? So you still faced a defense that the next week kept the Chargers to 10 points. So you can see, I could call that sort of an impressive showing. And then obviously Monday night, which was, I think, the statement in front of the nation, in front of the world, under the Monday night lights. You could say, okay, yeah, here we are. The Falcons have sort of arrived, and we can parlay this and use this as like a jumping off point to say, okay, NFL, we are here. That number one defense ranking isn't a fluke. We are definitely a team that can cause anyone problems. So I think that is something that can be used to say the Falcons are capable, at least, of being one of the teams we talk about going in late into January. Because this defense has number one in yards per game, number one in passing defense as well, yards, 7th in scoring defense, 4th and 3rd down defense. Like, these are all things that I'll admit, as a Falcons fan, regardless of what I thought of the offseason acquisitions and stuff, it's like, this is a pipe dream. I'm used to a team that can't get any pass rush, can't get anything going in terms of, stopping a premier quarterback like Josh Allen. Like, I'm sitting here nervously watching it as it's still a 1-score game when, Drake London could have easily got a touchdown there, and then the Bills come out at halftime, they get the score, and you're like, oh no, here we go. And then the offense stutters, you could say, in the second half, and you're like, oh, here we go. Josh Allen just going to march down and we're going to be tie game, and then from here on out, the Bills are going to come out winners in this game after what was such an impressive first half showing. And they just never got going again. They didn't score another point after their first drive of the second half, and then oh wow, this defense really is showing themselves to almost be the identity of what teams going into Falcons games, and that's what they're really pointing towards. Okay, we've got to make sure that defense is the issue, because before it was okay, you have Matt Ryan, you have Julio Jones, you have Devontae Freeman, Calvin Ridley, all that. The identity of the Falcons was just, well, as long as we can handle the guys in the offense, we can score points, we can get points, it's not really an issue. Now it's oh no, you're even looking at it, it's well, the coverages and the blitzes, the exotic way that the sending pressure, it's we've got to make sure that we can just diagnose what they're actually doing, because Josh Allen clearly seemed to be a bit lost and be a bit clueless at times to what the Falcons are doing, and that's what leads to turnovers, leads to the sacks, even leads to the 4th down where he's just oh, get rid of this ball, get it out of here, sort of thing. And obviously it's a team that does have investments in this past offseason. When you look at Jalen Walker and James Pierce drafted in the first round, 2 first-round picks trading back into the round to make sure that pass rush is something that doesn't, be anemic going forward. You have Xavier Watson in the 3rd round, Billy Bowman in the 4th round, who, funnily enough, didn't play on Monday night. So you even have him to come back for the Niners game Sunday night to, keep this form going on defense. And obviously, Divine Diablo and Leonard Floyd signed as free agents. Again, those are quite, shrewd, and almost let's make sure that this team has the veterans and the players in place to make sure that Ulbrich, who was brought in as defensive coordinator, does have the players at his disposal to change the culture, change the identity, and make sure it's a defense that you don't go into games thinking, okay, well, as long as we keep them to 25, 28, on offense, then we should be fine. Because, the defense isn't going to be able to get the stops required. But now you're looking at it and saying, okay, the defense is going to win some games here and hopefully maintain the form that they have in the previous 2 weeks, for sure. And, I mean, when you've got a player like Bijan Robinson, anything you want to say, like, that is special. And to have him 822 scrimmage yards this season, leading the league when you've played a game less than most because the bye week's already happened. You're like, you just have a special player at your disposal that you can do anything with. And like, this is the type of player that is literally has the offense built around him. Like, you ask the question, why the Falcons line up in pistol so much, which, quarterback 3 yards behind, the running back directly behind him. And that's something that most offenses run 10% of the time. The Falcons run it like 40% of the time, or almost half the time on offense. And you're like, why do they do that? Well, they said on the broadcast, they asked Zach Robinson, our offensive coordinator, and said, well, it's to give Bijan a better view, because you see the guy gliding through defenses, and partially it's because he has, a yard from behind looking directly, okay, so this is what they're doing, and then when the play's called and the run goes him, he's clearly using what the information he's learned from lining up far behind, and he's just scoot. Well, yeah, line up and pistol all you want, because if Bijan's able to have performances like he was on Monday night, keep it going, keep it setting, because that is what we're here for, and that's how the Falcons are going to win games, because, you have a quarterback in Michael Penix who has developed a really good connection with Drake London, and we'll get on to that, but he is still only 8 starts in, and it's a question mark of, can he be the one to win games for you like a Jaden is in his job class, like Drake May is at this current point. Can Penix be the one to win games? Probably not at this current minute. But when you've got a guy like Bijan who can take the mantle on his back and lead the way, then yeah, you can give Penix the time to develop that big man gene, that Superman gene that seemingly most quarterbacks who win at the highest level do. But at this moment in time, if you've got a Bijan playing in the form like he is now, then you can give Penix the time to learn how to be Superman, and learn to, make the, clutch plays that, a team that would be down big would require from their quarterback. But yeah, if the defense keeps playing like they are and Bijan keeps playing like there is, the Falcons are going to be a team that is serious, that is legit, that is going to make themselves known when the playoffs come around. And as I said about Drake London, who has been a big help to Penix, and clearly the connection has been very prolific when you consider the fact that Darnell Mooney hasn't been fit regularly enough. Ray McLeod was healthy and active in the last game, so it's really all been on London's shoulders. And in the 8 games that Penix and London have played together, London has 56 catches, 779 yards, and 4 tuds. So that is clearly a tandem that in almost half a season worth of games together, that is, getting progress, and is making themselves very much force for winning for this Falcons team. And obviously, as a Falcons fan, which I haven't exactly hidden that fact, and bring it more, because I'm hopeful. I am going into games with nerves, but as a good thing, because you want to have the hope to win a game, and not just because, it's mock draft season, let's look at who's doing well in college and what quarterbacks can be, my first round pick can be the future. No, I'm looking at it and saying, okay, we've got Bijan, we've got Penix, we've got London, haven't even mentioned, but Kyle Pitts as well, and that defense, that we have a young nucleus that we can build on for the future. So I think, this is a team that's very much on the rise, and we can very much make noise, and make good noise in a good way, and scratch the 30-point shutout that we had a couple weeks back. And move forward as a team that, yeah, watch out. The Atlanta Falcons are here. Well, the first coach bites the dust this season as the Tennessee Titans made a decision to fire head coach Brian Callahan after their 20-10 loss on the road to the Raiders, leaving them 1-5 on the season. This ends Callahan's tenure as head coach of the Tennessee Titans at the record of 4 wins, 19 losses. Jesus Christ. And the search for Cam Ward's second permanent head coach begins only 6 games into his NFL career. Fun fact, this makes now the last 4 number 1 overall pick quarterbacks in the NFL having their coaches fired in their rookie year. But I think the Tennessee Titans themselves have quite the timeline of dysfunction, let's call it. And I do have it written down here, kind of the GMs and head coaches that have been fired just within the past 3 years. So, pardon me. December 2022, they fired GM John Robinson, who famously made the draft night trade away of AJ Brown to the Philadelphia Eagles, where you see Mike Vrabel quite clearly and quite obviously disappointed with the decision, or definitely from the video you could infer that what are we trading AJ Brown for? And then Treylon Burks, they ended up picking, he's not on the team anymore, actually. So, yeah, that pick definitely wasn't worth the trade for AJ Brown in the end. But, December 2022, fired John Robinson. January 2023, they replace John Robinson with Rand Carthon as GM and then bring in Chad Brinker as assistant GM. January 2024, they fire Mike Vrabel, who they face this weekend, so I'm sure he'll be quite motivated. Interesting time for that decision as well. But in the same month as firing Mark Vrabel, they then promote Chad Brinker, who was brought in as Carthon's assistant GM. They promote him to president of football operations above Carthon, so that's kind of interesting. That's a bit of like, hold on, the hierarchy shifted here. How's that going to work? I brought you into the organization and now you're my boss. So, interesting one there. And that's in the same month and off season where they bring in Brian Callahan as their head coach to replace Mike Vrabel for the start of last season. And, now we'll just keep the timeline going. January 2025, they fire Rand Carthon, so that's obviously this year after last season. But Brinker's still on board as president of football ops, so it's like, okay, the guy who brought him into the organization's sacked, but Brinker's going to stick around, and then he's going to bring in Mike Borgonzi from the Chiefs as his GM. So then again, it's like, okay, there's still a different sort of tenureship and not really kind of harmonious sort of structure here, but let's bring in Borgonzi. Obviously Callahan's going to stick around, even though Callahan wasn't hired by this regime, so it's like, okay, what's going on here? And now we have from Monday afternoon, Monday morning, where Brian Callahan's fired the week before, facing Mike Vrabel, who's their old head coach. So even within this period, which is kind of a tough one, they've drafted 3 different quarterbacks. So John Robinson, 2022, drafts Malik Willis. Then Carthon in 2023 in his first draft drafts Will Levis, who's been injured for this year. And then Borgonzi, who's just come in this offseason, drafts Cam Ward. So now it's like, okay, the adage, I guess, that's recently come in NFL circles is, organizations fail young quarterbacks when the quarterbacks fail them. I think if you're looking for an organization that is the worst sort of situation, I guess there probably are. The Jets and the Browns haven't really covered themselves in glory over the past 20 years. But at least in recent times, especially within this short period, in the past 3 years, is there a worse organization to go to than the Tennessee Titans? There are a few that you'd find that would be definitively worse. And, these are 3 quarterbacks here. Obviously, Cam Ward being the number 1 overall pick. Like, it's tough to succeed in these sorts of circumstances. And so far, he obviously hasn't succeeded because the team's been 1-5, and even that one win was the circus of errors that the Cardinals had to really hand the win over to Tennessee, which they took. So fair play to you, but I mean, literally, there's not a team in the league, maybe the Jets, that would have been able to take advantage of a fumble, touchback through the end zone, and then intercepting a pass, but then fumbling it and then kicking it into our end zone so that you recover and then score a touchdown. Do you see how ridiculous that sounds? Well, that happened, and that's the one win the Tennessee Titans have this season. So, you can't really say that Brian Callahan really has much leg to stand on, you can admit, to keep his job after, the performances they were letting on. I mean, I'm someone who has, Raiders in his fantasy, so I did pay somewhat attention to that game before the Niners-Bucks game kicked off, and it did seem like, okay, wow, the Titans even seem almost a tier below the Raiders, which, they themselves as 2-1-14, it shouldn't be the case, but obviously the Raiders definitely came out of the win there and looked, in that game, good, but, they've got the Chiefs this weekend, so who even knows. But back on the Titans, it is a difficult situation, but you've got to find a head coach to bring in now for Cam Ward and for his development, because that is the quickest way to being a good organization, or at least a good franchise that wins and succeeds again. So I'll just kind of go through some candidates for the job, just 3. I think there are also other names you could bring on, like Clint Kubiak in Seattle, or the Jaguars' DC Campanelli, who, has had, at least for this year, some shine. But I think if I was the Titans organization, these are the top 3 names that I would look for. First up, Jesse Minter, who's currently the Chargers defensive coordinator. He's marshaled what was last year the number 1 defense in terms of total defense, and this year it's a top 10 defense in many categories, so he's been able to maintain that sort of standard and maintain level of performance, which has the Chargers starting off really well this season, and they've got the win in Miami, so they're looking at least on the way up. He's been working under Jim Harbaugh for 3 years now, because he came from Michigan, started there in 22, and then got brought over to the Chargers, worked in the Baltimore Ravens organization as well, which has had a very good track record of producing future head coaches. So you could definitely say that Minters looks good in that regard. Think what I would kind of have a drawback of, and I wouldn't be sure of from a Titans perspective, is the network of coaches on the offensive side of the ball, because he is a defensive guy. And when you want to develop a quarterback, and you need to have that plan of, okay, who am I going to bring in as the offensive coordinator, as a quarterback coach? Who am I going to bring in to develop? Because you can't really say that he's had to deal with that directly, at least, because his NFL jobs have considered, well, being an assistant and position coach for the Ravens, where they have Lamar Jackson, so there wasn't really much development to do at the time he was there, and now he's come in to a situation with Justin Herbert, has again already established himself as a really good, a high level quarterback. So who how does he know how to develop our number 1 guy, which we need to develop and needs to be the main focus, unless the offense side of the ball probably is number 1, as well as the culture that kind of goes hand in hand. So I wouldn't be so sure of bringing in Jesse Minter from a Titans perspective. But even from a Jesse Minter perspective, I think when you're looking at the jobs available, to where the Ravens job could become available, right? And I'd want to go into a situation as someone on this side of the ball, and I can focus more on like the culture and focus more on the what my specialty is, and especially for a team like the Ravens, who I mentioned, with a job that potentially could come open if the season continues to disappoint on their side, that you know John Harbaugh could be fired, and then that job opened up, and someone with familiarity with the organization, Jesse Minter, that's the job you walk into right there, and you kind of look at the Titans job and say, no thanks. Which, admittedly, this job isn't one where someone with choices would take, because if you're saying, okay, let's say the Bengals job even comes up, and well, I know they're a cheap owner, but hey, I've got Joe Burrow, so there's a pathway to win. Let's even look at the I guess the Titans and Jets probably go hand in hand if Aaron Glenn. I didn't mean to do that. No. But the Jets are a team that have to find that quarterback. So again, Titans, Jets, they kind of find themselves on that similar sort of playing field in terms of who they're looking for as a head coach. So, yeah, I think in terms of Jesse Minter, I would still put him on the list, because I do think in terms of building a culture and being around guys with Jim Harbaugh, I mean, he goes into everywhere he goes, the team like doubles their win totals for the season, like year on year. So clearly there's a culture there that beds guys and, makes sure the confidence is high. And like, look at Quentin Johnston. I mean, he looked like the biggest bust of all time, right? He didn't have hands, and this year he's grown hands. Like, look, that's what, the type of coaching that Harbaugh brings can do for someone. So I would definitely put him on the list if I was the Tennessee Titans. Another person I put on the list is Mike McCarthy. Obviously, he's someone who was working with, he was last with the Dallas Cowboys at the end of last season. That didn't end well, but there are many years. Like, look, he's got a 60% win percentage in 16 seasons as a head coach. Like, that is an unbelievable win rate for that period of time. And I know you have Favre as a quarterback, and then you go into Aaron Rodgers, and then you had Dak as your next quarterback. Like, he's had experience with very high level quarterbacks throughout his career as an offensive minded coach, which again, from a Times perspective, would be probably my number one consideration for someone to bring in. And full development of Aaron Rodgers. He was there, drafted in 06, and McCarthy was brought in 06, so he was there for the whole time. And he also was the coach for Dak's best statistical season in his career. So he's definitely able to, build offenses and call plays in a way that allows your quarterback to succeed. And in a situation where Cam Ward does need that sort of support at this stage in his career, I think bringing in someone who's an established name, bringing in someone who has that sort of cachet that, everyone in the building will listen to, and doesn't have the earache of Jerry Jones kind of in his ear the whole time or in front of the camera the whole time. But the Titans owner didn't even show up for the press conference to say Brian Callahan was fired. So clearly they don't want to be front of face or front of camera or anything. So, you can step up and surely be the face of the franchise, or be the one who's has full reign to, get your message out there and support Cam Ward in any way that you see fit. So if I were the Titans, this would be one of the first, if not the first call I make, I'll be honest. But the next guy, and the one who, if I was to put money on it and to predict based on the information at hand who would be the next head coach for the Tennessee Titans, it'd probably be Matt Nagy, because he has head coach experience, similar to Mike McCarthy, I said earlier. Not as long and not as successful or prolific wins-wise, but current Chiefs OC, and, that's time with Patrick Mahomes, who clearly is the best quarterback in the league, and under Andy Reid, who, again, develops and just like one of if not the premier play caller in the league today. So having experience and working under that person for so long, and heck, even in his head coaching job, right, he got to the playoffs with Mitch Trubisky and had Justin Fields playing really well during his time there during his rookie year. And since he's gone, like, it's not like the Bears have exactly been an organization that wins a bunch. They didn't, replace him with someone who was, night and day, like it was night and night. And now the day may have come for Chicago now, but in terms of what the organization has been, you can't say that, oh, Matt Nagy's the problem. Like, the problem's been long lasting. So, someone who's been in the Chiefs building since 2022, and that includes two or three Super Bowl wins, and being an offensive not play caller because Reed calls plays, but an offensive coordinator who is bringing plays to the fore and is very much a big part of what the Chiefs do on offense. With a guy like Patrick Mahomes, like, you want to bring some of that. You want that to transfer over, and hopefully in your situation as the Tennessee Titans, who the only way is up, you can hope that someone like Matt Nagy can come in and bring that sort of character and that sort of opportunity for Cam Ward to perform under such a system. And the reason that I was pointing to before is why I think this will eventually be the pick is because, Borganzi, the general manager currently, was brought in from the Chiefs organization. So there is that easy link to say, okay, so I know you, you know me, like, let's build what we had there here and be the leaders of that sort of change. And having that with familiar people, I think, is the probably number one. Like, everyone wants to work with someone they're familiar with. Everyone wants to work with someone that they have previous with, because, maybe if you're working from a young position as well, like, if you're young and you know this person, like, when you get older and you know that person too, like, okay, I know what they've been through. I know what they're about. So if I bring them here, they're just going to bring what they're about, and I want that. So in my opinion, I think this is the way they go. But Minter, McCarthy, Nagy, if I were the Titans organization, these are the three main candidates, and we'll see how they go. But it is very important because Cam Ward, number one overall pick, you've got to make sure that he has the best opportunity to perform at the high level, because that's the only way the Titans are going to go from bottom to anywhere near the top. So it's got to be the right one. All right, time for my favorite section and yours, the pick six. Every week against the spread, 6 games over the weekend. How did we do last week? It was another 3-3. It's meant to be 6. It's meant to be 6. I need that 6-0 week. I need that 6-0 week because we're behind the 8 ball. This season we're 15-20. It's just a losing record. We can't have that. We can't. We just can't. We've got to do better. And this week we do better. But last week, how'd it go? So Rams -7.5 at Ravens. Cha-ching. No problems there. No Lamar. No problem for me. That's an easy win for the Rams there. Chargers -4.5 is just it's a close one. I believe when that Dolphins touchdown went in and the cover was blown, I was like, damn it! Like, really, Miami? What are you competing for? There's nothing left. Tua's gone, or Tua probably not gone because the contract's so big. But McDaniel's gone. Just, keep it moving. Just, why are you competing? What's the point? Just ruining the pick six for everyone. Jeez. Patriots -3.5 at Saints. Ching. Yep, Drake May's really coming to his own. Another big play. Another great one for Patriots fandom. Good, congratulations to you, and you're welcome from the Falcons. Falcons send their regards because you're top of the AFC East now. So congratulations. Niners +3 at Bucks. I thought they put up better, and they did put up a good fight, obviously. On the road, you lose Fred Warner. That's a very tough injury to take, and it's the Niners just. I mean, it's not getting in their own way because the number of injuries that they're having to deal with, and to be fair, at least it seems like they'll get Kittle back for this weekend, and Jennings was back, and hopefully he has a week to rest up his 5 broken ribs that I saw. I was like, damn, like take a rest. It's like, it's tough, but obviously they have to try and keep it moving. But yeah, Bucks covered there and got the win, and they have a tough one coming up this week. Lions plus 2.5 at the Chiefs Sunday nighter. Yeah, no, they got bullied. If that's at least what sort of Brian Branch will tell you. But yeah, that's a tough one for them. 13-point loss there, and well, I tell you, Falcons plus 4.5 against the Bills at home off the bye. Defense is susceptible to the run game. Bijan didn't think Drake would go off like he did, but he did. So only Falcons wide receiver to catch a pass. So well, what are you gonna do? Falcons plus 4.5 over a field goal. Like, come on, that was coming in regardless. So, what are this week's picks? What is the 6-0 week for week 7? It's coming. Start off Bucks plus 5.5 at the Lions. 5.5-point underdogs. Really? Number 1 seed currently in the NFC is gonna get battered by over almost a touchdown. Like, come on, people. Like, I know Mike Evans and Godwin's aren't looking likely, but Buka's only a day-to-day, I believe. So, that's a hamstring. That's one that you obviously monitor, but could easily make the trip. And Baker's playing at an MVP level regardless. So, like, he was throwing touchdowns to Tez Johnson, Cameron Johnson, Sterling Shepard, you, me. I think even with the injuries that the Buccaneers currently have, I think they'll be able to keep this one very competitive. This one, I do believe, will be high scoring, especially with Brian Branch suspended for the game. And when you're in shootout territory, I think the Bucks can keep this one within 5.5 points. 5.5. Wow. Okay. Sure. Even if it's a forward field, I do like the Bucks odds here. Packers minus 6.5 against the Cardinals. Now, Packers really haven't been good against the spread this season. I don't know what the record is, but there have been a couple of times where I've backed them and they haven't come off. So, bit tentative, but I don't believe Jacoby Brissett's going to have 2 really good performances in a row, especially because if Carr doesn't play in this game, you'll have a team that's actually able to fully, prepare for him. Saw earlier that the Colts had Ashton Doolin doing like a pass rush rep, their wide receiver, and because he's their gunner on punt team, and it's good to have sort of a speedy guy do a pass rush rep, prepping for Kyler, which is what this play was for, and they still had him play that one snap, but it was clear the Colts prepared for Kyler and then got Jacoby, and that could easily explain why the Cardinals were able to keep the one quite competitive with the other 5-1 team in the NFL. So the Packers won't have such problems. It's at Lambeau. You've got the pieces on defense to make this a dominant win for you, and Matthew Golden, Romeo Dobbs, like they've got the piece on offense as well. Josh Jacobs had a great game against the Bengals, so he's in good form going into this one with a Cardinals team that just seems out on their feet, at least in terms of the playoff contention. Like, they've gone from 2-0 to 2-4. That's 4 straight defeats. So I think the Packers, they almost put the nail in the coffin for the Cardinals for this year, and put the hammer down and get the 6.5-point covering that I need for the 6-0 week. Third one, Panthers minus 1.5 at the Jets. Jets just are the worst team in the league, aren't they? This is gosh darn. What are we as Brits? Why are we subjected to such tyranny? No, I mean, not literal tyranny, but in terms of why the Americans, why the Yanks get all the good games and we get the Jets. stinking up the joint. Granted, it is Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and as an Arsenal fan, I do appreciate how stinky Tottenham was after that game, but not as a Brit on our soil having such disgusting football on our shore. And I think they'll go back to their shore though, because this game's at MetLife, and the way Rico Dowdle's been playing the past 2 weeks, the Jets have a 23rd in Russian defense, so I would expect another impressive performance from Rico Dowdle, even if Chuba Hubbard's about, because they'll both just share the load at this point, because the Jets, it just seems like it's only going downhill, and a 1.5 point spread. I think the Panthers, who feel themselves after 2 wins in a row against subpar opposition, but guess what? The Jets are subpar opposition, so I see the Panthers coming away with a decent win here, and win by a field goal against these Jets. If you're the team you say you are, go on and do it. So next up, Jags +3 versus the Rams in London. Hopefully a better game for our shores. I will be there, so I don't know if anyone is gonna be at Wembley on Sunday. Shout a brother out. I don't know, but there we are. The Jags are adopted sons, you could say. They're 4-1 in their last 5 London games, so they definitely have almost as much as a home field advantage as you can in an international game. And seeing as this is the curtain call for at least the London International Series this season, I do believe that at least this Jags-Ram game should be competitive, should be a showcase for the NFL, unlike what last week was, for what the NFL truly can be like. Brian Thomas Jr. back in scoring form, had a 21-yard touchdown, even had a 54-yarder chalked off because of illegal formation. I know Travis Hunter was offside, so maybe that was even the call, but unfortunately they had one chalked off, but it is in his locker. He is able to make the big play as he was at the late stage of the last season, get that connection with Trevor that he had with Mac Jones last year. And Puka left the game last week against the Ravens, so we'll obviously monitor that. But a +3 line, I do like the Jags with their defense, and coming off a loss, being able to keep that one, within the laws, within the the spread. So Jags +3, good, fantastic. 5, Commanders -1.5 at the Cowboys. Speaking on that subpar opposition I was talking about with the Panthers, here's subpar opposition, the Cowboys. It's one side of the ball is fantastic, the other is just shocking. I don't need stats to tell you, because you have eyes. The Cowboys' defense is Swiss cheese. It's just knife through butter, just knife through hot butter. They can't. They won't be able to stop the Commanders with Jaden Daniels, who now again coming off a loss. I don't see them losing 2 in a row. Terry McLaurin's back in practice this week, so he can easily play in this one, and I see this being just divisional. Like, the Commanders need this one, and a -1.5, even if it's in Jerry's World at AT&T Stadium. Commanders are going to come away with the win this one. You know it, I know it, and that's 5-0 so far. And the 6-0, the Hammer Seahawks Monday night -3 versus the Texans. I don't think the Texans' offense has turned a corner, because he put 40 plus on the Ravens. Who hasn't put up big numbers on the Ravens? Come on. This Seahawks team's going to be a real test. And even though it's off the bye, I do think that the Seahawks defense is going to be able to keep the Texans at bay. And I believe Seattle only needs about 20 in this one to make the cover 3-point spread. 14-17. I don't see the Texans getting more than that. And the way that Sam Darnold and JSN have built that connection so far this season, I think that's a way that it will continue, and it will lead to yards and touchdowns and points for the Seattle Seahawks, especially at home, who weirdly enough haven't been as good at home as they have on the road, because I believe they've won their last 9 games on the road away from home. So, bring a bit of that form back home, get the -3 on Monday nights under the lights. Seattle gets that dub, and I have a 6-0 week. Say it with me, 6-0, 6-0. It's coming, people. Believe it. I know I do. Well, there we are. Thanks for that. That's the episode 10. Double digits. We've made it. Let's keep it going. Let's support the boy. Like, subscribe, rate, follow. All the good stuff that you can do for podcasts these days. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Let's do it. Let's grow. Let's keep going. Thanks for tuning in. And bye-bye.